have scheduled for you an appointment at the microclinic. Your full medical history and self-exam results from this morning have been confirmed received. And your primary care doctor, Liz Childress, has been notified of your appointment.
Sophie, we've been expecting you. I'm Lily, your technologist. Let me show you to your personal pod.
Mom, where do I begin?
Hi there. Welcome to the Future of Healthcare Symposium. My name is Rob Walton. I look after the Europe, Middle East, and Africa region for GE Healthcare. Thanks so much for everybody joining today. We really appreciate you making the time to come to the session. Here we're going to talk a bit about what the future of healthcare may look like, but more importantly, how we're going to get there. Now, predicting the future is a notoriously precarious thing to do. And even though we may have great visions of what the future might look like, when it actually turns up, it can often be something that's quite different from what we thought before. Peter Thiel, who was the co-founder of PayPal, he captured this reality quite well with his observation about the advance of technology into the 21st century. We wanted flying cars, but instead we got 140 characters, which is a reference to the number of letters that you can have in a single tweet. Now, as exciting as it is and amazing as it is that I can share with all of you what I had for breakfast this morning and with the rest of the world, it doesn't quite live up to the visions for the science fiction future that I dreamt about when I was a young kid. You know, when we think about healthcare, often we think about visions of the future like the one in the slide behind. You know, this is a utopian healthcare environment where data flows seamlessly between patients and clinicians, enabling immediate diagnoses and unlimited capacity for treatments in spa-like centers that really enable people to have a very tailored patient experience. You know, it's a great vision for the future, and certainly when it turns up, I'll be the first in the queue to be able to get there. But the reality is today's, you know, the day-to-day reality is not quite the same. It's something quite different from that. You know, the reality, if we look at some of the challenges that exist in healthcare today, there are some fundamental challenges that continue to exist and have persisted for many years. You know, the key issues around quality, cost, and access to healthcare have been around for a long time, and they continue to be the single biggest issues that we have today. You know, today, even, you know, after many advances in oncology, less than 1 in 5 patients survive for more than 5 years after being diagnosed with lung cancer. In terms of inefficiencies, you know, more than 20% of the spend that takes place in healthcare is wasted across all of the healthcare systems around the world. You know, and access to healthcare is actually getting worse over time. You know, the backlogs across most of the countries in Europe have gotten longer and longer in the most recent years. And for many of the world's population, also almost 3.8 billion people still don't have access to basic healthcare. You know, so despite all of the many advances in medical technology, in clinical practice that have taken place over the years, we still haven't moved on that far in terms of some of these basic issues that exist within healthcare. Patient experience is often one of the most challenging situations. It can often be very variable, and despite all the fantastic work that clinical teams do every single day, the experience for many patients can still be a very disjointed process, involving many different institutions, many different clinicians, and extended over an extremely long period of time. This can generate huge levels of anxiety for patients, and in some cases, that can actually have an adverse effect on the quality and the effectiveness of the treatment they've been given. You know, COVID-19 changed everything. You know, this had a magnifying and accelerating effect on many of the trends that were already underway within healthcare. You know, some of these effects were extremely positive, but many of these were actually quite negative effects. Some of the positive things were, you know, the advances in vaccine development, where we actually accelerated some of the capabilities way beyond what we expected it to be like. But on the other hand, it's also exposed the fragility of the healthcare system and highlighted the need for more robustness and resilience throughout the industry. One of the big evolutions that took place in COVID was the advance of telehealth. And in terms of the levels of telehealth usage post-COVID, has actually remained at extremely elevated levels compared to before. This is something that would not have happened if it wasn't for COVID, and it's amazing to see the adoption of this type of technology, both by patients but also by clinicians all around the world. On the other hand, the stresses and strains that exist within the healthcare systems, and crucially on the clinicians themselves, is really evident to see, with extremely high levels of burnout around the world in all types of clinicians, and a record number of clinicians that are expecting to leave the profession in the next few years, which is an extremely worrying situation. One of the contributing factors to the pressure on clinicians is the explosion of data that's taken place over the years. While advances in medical imaging and diagnostic testing provides insights that were never possible before, really rich information that we never knew about what's going on inside the human body. The downside of this is it generates tremendous amount of data, which overwhelms the clinicians and the institutions that need to deal with this. Today, the average hospital generates more than 50 petabytes of data per year. I don't know if everybody knows what a petabyte is. It's a huge number. I had to look at it myself. It's a 1 with lots and lots of zeros behind it. To put it in more real terms, that's equivalent to 12 billion books. If we look at the Austrian National Library here in Vienna, that contains about 12 million books, which is 1,000 times less data than the average amount of data generated by one hospital in 1 year. So a huge amount of information that's being generated, but the humans and the systems that need to utilize it just don't have the capacity or the capability to make use of it. And the net result is that the vast majority of that data goes to waste, with less than 3% of it actually being used for any tangible benefit. The most important resource in healthcare is and always will be human intelligence. Unfortunately, this is also the most scarce resource that we have within healthcare, and it's getting more and more scarce over time because of some of the issues that we talked about earlier. On the contrary, the most abundant data now, resource is actually data, and this is getting more and more abundant every day. So for us to really be able to utilize this in an effective way and to be able to transform healthcare and be able to deliver better care, we have to find the way to combine the human intelligence with the artificial intelligence and unlock all of that rich data that exists and all those rich insights that enable us to develop solutions that can enable us to deliver better care. At G Healthcare, our vision is to deliver precision care. What this means is taking multimodal sources of information, whether that's imaging data, radiomics, whether it's pathology data, genomic information, vital signs, laboratory data, EMR information, and combining that together, utilizing a digital health platform which is embedded with artificial intelligence and capability. This enables us to deliver precision diagnostics, precision therapy, and precision monitoring, with the outcome being able to enable earlier and more accurate diagnoses, and also more targeted and specific treatments that ultimately can enable better outcomes for patients. However, the challenge is not about the vision, and the challenge is not about the technology or the clinical evolution. One of our biggest challenges is about how do we actually turn this into a reality, and how do we achieve that vision for the future of healthcare in the cold light of today's reality. There are many, many hurdles that we have to face to be able to bring this technology into the world and to be able to, more importantly, make it part of the day-to-day clinical practice. We have challenges with privacy and cybersecurity, the cost and the investments required to be able to develop this technology, ethical issues associated with what should we be using AI? Is that something that we should actually allow to come into the medical profession and to be used for clinical practice? Quality and regulatory considerations are important. This stuff is, at the end of the day, a medical technology. We need to treat it in the same way as a medical device like any other device that we bring on the market. And that has its own implications and challenges that we'd have to think through. And the most important thing is, how do we actually take this out of the lab and out of the test areas of the hospital and make it part of the day-to-day clinical practice and have it integrated and used every single day by every single patient? These are some of the challenges. And really, for us to be able to solve that, it's not about one institution, it's not about one player. The only way we can really solve this is about collaboration across the entire ecosystem. What we need here is collaboration between institutions, clinicians, AI firms, technology providers, all working together to be able to create these solutions and to be able to nurture and foster the AI capabilities, and most crucially find the way to embed them into the day-to-day clinical practice. This is the challenges that we have, and what we're going to spend most of the session for the rest of today is talking about how do you do this. So moving from that vision of what healthcare might look like to, more importantly, how do we actually implement this on a day-to-day basis, and what are some of the challenges that practitioners are facing every single day to be able to bring this technology into reality and to make it work in practice. I'll be joined later on by a very distinguished panel of people who are actually using AI on a day-to-day basis. They're actually bringing it into their hospitals, bringing it into their workflows, and actually deriving the benefits and also facing some of the challenges on a day-to-day basis. Now, before I do that, I'd like to introduce my colleague, Cecilia Olsen, who is our patient advocate for GE Healthcare, and she's going to give us a bit more insight about some of the realities of what the journey is like for the average patient in today's reality. Thank you, Cecilia.
So before getting into the topic, of course, I would like to address a very first thank you to my company, to Rob, to Marike, to enable me to bring my purpose at work. This is amazing, so thank you for that as a start. Indeed, I'm here to speak about patient experience and give you a few insights on what's happening behind the scenes. We speak about images. You're here for images, all this ecosystem we build around the images and everything you get out of those images. But it's so much more than that. Actually, it's a story. It's our common images, because it's such a strong link between myself and you with regards to those images. And you can see me, so my slide is not there anymore. There you go. So these images, that's me as well. You see me here today, live kicking, happy to be here, but this is me as well. And those images, as I said, these are our common images. And there's a story behind each image. I can remember absolutely each second, each word you told me, your expression, your eyes, those expert eyes that are reading those images and telling me afterwards, Cecilia, you're okay. Cecilia, it doesn't look good. And that's why it's much more than images. It's about emotions. These images do create a kind of roller coaster in my emotions. And that's the life of a woman, a wife, and a mother every day when we deal with breast cancer. So more than 2 words. Breast cancer, I think we could go nuts when we think on how a journey can look like just for 2 words. 2 breasts. What does it actually mean? So the images that you can see there have all been taken at least at 7, 8 different sites. So how do we connect the dots there? And it do show a very scattered ecosystem around the patients, and this is, I guess, what we will try to fix here together as a team. But it does mean as well, for me here, it's an invasive lobular breast cancer with a few complications on top of a protocol. And what does it mean in figures? It means more than 3,000 kilometers of traveling for a woman. It means more than 300 appointments that a woman takes herself. It means more than 15 interventions, some of them are more heavier than the others. It means waiting for results. It means anxiety. It means fears. It also means a very large responsibility put on the patients, because very often I am the one that has to unlock the next level of my treatment, because I am the one bringing the results, the images, the outcomes, the reports that you might hand over to me, to my next care provider. And remember, you are at least 7, 8 persons around me. caring for me. Of course, thanks to you, I'm here today. But again, you see, it's only 2 words, but such a long journey. And I think it's here I would like to pass the word back to Rob. But before doing so, I also want to say that it's more than gratitude, because what we're doing here is magic. It's beyond gratitude. It's beyond a thank you. We are a team, and it's. I can not be more proud than being here. What we're doing together and unlocking the future together, what we call medicine, and that's it. Thank you for listening to me, and thank you for coming today.
Thanks so much to Cecilia. I think really very emotional story and a very real story for many patients around the world. And that unfortunately is the reality for many people who suffer with breast cancer and all forms of cancer and many other diseases. Is a reality that we face. We're going to now move on to the panel discussion, and I've got a very distinguished group of colleagues who are going to join me for the session today. So first of all, I would like to ask Professor Nensa to join. He is a professor of radiology and head of the AI research group at the Institute of Artificial Intelligence and Medicine at Essen University in Germany. Thank you, Felix, for joining. My next guest is Professor Eva Seller. She's also Professor of Radiology and also Director at the Advanced Radiodiagnostics Center at Gemelli University in Italy. Thanks for joining, Avis. My third guest is Dr. Roncaci. He's the Senior Vice President and Chief Medical Officer for Affidea Group, which is one of the largest private imaging groups in the world. So it gives us a bit of a private institution perspective. So thank you for joining, Alessandro. And last but not least, I'll invite my GE colleague, Ben Newton. Ben is the head of Oncology Solutions at GE Healthcare. So thanks for joining, Ben. So, as I mentioned, partly what we'd like to focus on today is to talk about what's the realities of taking that vision for what the future of healthcare might look like and look at the realities of how to put it in place. We can never get to where we would like to be without actually going through the hard work of implementation. And so the people we have on the stage here tonight are people who are actually doing this every single day. They're going through that hard work of taking the vision, but really working through the practicalities of how we do that on a day-to-day basis. I'd like to start with Professor Seller. Thanks for joining again, Avis. Obviously, we heard from Cecilia, and we heard the story that she's faced in terms of her journey as a breast cancer patient. What are your perspectives? What do you see from your patients and in your institution, and what is your observation around this situation?
Well, as much as Cecilia is very special, her story is a story of many patients, actually. So Cecilia is not alone, because we see it every day that we, of course, strive to deliver the integrated care as much as we can. But at the end of the day, wherever I've worked, and I've worked in a few places by now, right now we deliver quite a fragmented care. And what Cecilia said, it's the travel, it's the anxiety. I think from the radiology point of view, maybe it's the reports that sometimes are ineligible, not understandable, what comes next. Maybe when one goes to have the next medical appointment, the report is not ready. The discussion, the tumor board meeting, of course, happens, but like in any tumor board meeting, people overtalk on top of each other, and then so everything it's what I call the sort of a disorganized chaos, which actually reaches a decision at the end, but how it does, it's a bit of a struggle. So what are the barriers? Definitely right now the care is fragmented. Even if you go at the same hospital, even the various satellites of the same hospital or group hospitals are disconnected. It's a fact. there is no, the radiologist, if I take the radiologist's point of view, although I kind of don't like to take only the radiologist's point of view, because patient comes as one, and patient goes through the whole system, okay? So I think we have to stop thinking patient came to radiology, patient came to the hospital, and then we have to organize ourselves so we deliver integrated care. So that is something very important. But I think time, the lack of access to really AI, to good AI, I mean, we are bombarded with various solutions. What is the one to choose? I think when you have too much on offer, it becomes very difficult to choose. The fear of using AI, is it going to, replace us? And this is still tangible. And I think persuading the stakeholders to actually embrace tools that will completely change Cecilia's story. Luckily, all went well, but there are many women and men out there that are facing the same thing again. So I think several areas that we have to tackle.
Thank you. Thanks, Avis. And I'm not sure if we should use the word organized chaos, but that's probably, unfortunately, the reality, isn't it? It's the challenges we have to face. But thanks for the perspectives. Just switching to you, Felix, you've been working in this area and really looking at some of these areas of precision care. What does precision care and more precise care mean to you from an outlook perspective?
Yeah. If we now go to the expo here, for instance, you see a lot of AI tools. Every vendor has AI, and we see it everywhere, and we see it probably a couple of you already have it in their practice and using it. But as radiologists, we are often a bit, susceptible to see not the patient, but the image. And in fact, that's just one aspect of it, one side of the patient. It's the images, of course, but there's much more. And there's also in the images, there's much more like radiomics. And then we have genetic data and lab data and EMR and variables, very important source of data, et cetera, et cetera. So, and what we see at the moment as AI is mostly also focused then on one modality, one thing like images, and then helping us to interpret these images. But in future, if we really want to do precision healthcare, we really need to get out of this siloed thinking. We need to see the whole patient with all of the data that comes from the patient. And that means in the first instance, we need a platform, because all the data, all the systems in the hospital are still organized in these siloed thinking. So we need a platform on top of this that gives us access to all this data. Then on top of this platform, we can also host AI models that are using more than images, because it's so obvious that in future all AI models will be multimodal, because you get more information out of the patient if you look at more than the images. That's completely obvious, though these models will work like this. And then the next problem is, we need also make the environment in a way on top of these platforms that not just the AI, the multimodal AI can live in that, but also because we want this AI be supervised by humans, by us. So if I as a radiologist are to supervise an AI that also uses genetic data, lab data, whatever, I need a platform that really supports me in doing so. And I think this is the kind of ecosystem that we now have to start building the platforms. And then next step, we also have to do something about educating ourselves to maybe become information specialists and not just radiologists. And then in the end, to really deliver on our promise to deliver precision healthcare.
That makes sense. Thanks, Felix. So if I switch to you, Alessandro, we've just heard from Professor Nenzer and Professor Sala, who both university-based radiologist experts and working in the public sector. Switching to the private sector, obviously things often a little bit different, but what is your perspective on these types of solutions, and what are some of the things that you've been working on in your context and working with your technicians and your clinicians about how you improve the day-to-day workflow in their institutions?
Yes, first of all, let me let me tell which was the journey to date and how we changed our skin. And based on the experience of Cecilia and the inputs that Avis and Felix give us, are aligned with our approach. Why this? Because we started as a primary provider in diagnostic imaging cancer care therapy. So we look at the results and the outcomes. And the paradigm that Avis presented before was exactly what we did until 3-4 years ago. Now we want to change, or we are changing our approach because it is a more patient-centric approach in which we wanted to become a little bit out of hospital service providers, not only focusing on DI and cancer care, but focusing on the outpatient diagnostic, including lab and diagnostic imaging, and also low complexity treatment, in order to take care from prevention to the follow-up of the pathway. We are not a public hospital, a big hospital, so we have to deliver this according to our infrastructure. But for sure, looking at the patient-centric attention to the referral satisfaction and also our doctors, because we have to be attractive and to retain our doctors, we are building a journey in which the integrated care pathways in different areas is essential. In breast, in prostate, in the lung, in cardiac care. And we want to use our ecosystem where we have within our polyclinics, within our center of excellence, and within our network of centers in order to take care of the process, the journey from prevention, diagnosis, low complexity treatment, and the follow-up, not only within our network, but in partnership with third parties. So we can become the solution, or the integrated solution, not only for the outpatient services, but also in agreement with the big hospitals in order to allow them to continue to dedicate themselves to the high complexity of the emergency and urgency. How we can do this? First of all, maintaining our attention to the clinical governance structures. Quality and safety should continue to be the core business in our sector. Second, to implementing every time to adopt the latest technology. In this regard, for sure, GE is one partner in this. And to introduce the innovative solutions. When I talk about innovative solutions, to give an example, to ensure patient safety and to be compliant with the regulation in dose management, our digital dose excellence program is recognized worldwide, and we have this solution that allow us to monitor real-time the exposure of the CT examination, connecting 140 equipment across 15 countries. So this is something that is impressive, where the technology can allow us to do this. The second topic can be the adoption of solution, deep learning of AI solution to accelerate some process like RecondDL, where we can improve for sure the comfort of the patient because we reduce the time of the acquisition of the examination. At the same time, we have also the opportunity to have operational efficiency because we have to look also at the business because we are private provider. The third one is the working network. That is very important because if we have different centers with a common PACS and research system, we can use the network radiology to use our subspecialty expertise. So we cannot have everywhere professionals like our colleagues today, but we can deliver best-in-class examination using the collaboration of these in the network. And the last but not least is the use of AI. Not only looking at clinical perspective or clinical value, but operational impact, and also maintaining these two elements with a commercial impact too, because we have to have the same cost benefits. So this is more or less our ecosystem, and this is more or less our direction in order to allow patients like Cecilia to don't go everywhere for the blood test and then to to come for the mammography and then to wait 1 week for the biopsy and to the results, and etc. So this is the key point, patient-centric.
Thanks, Alessandro. I mean, it's interesting that the points you raise seem to transcend whether it's public or private. The issues are the same whether you're in a public institution or private, and it's really the issues around the patient continue to be some of these biggest challenges that we face. If I can turn to you, Ben, obviously you've heard a lot about the challenges for cancer patients. You know, you've worked with a lot of providers around the world and also with technologists around the world. Maybe you could share with the group here some of the things that we've been working on in GE that will help to address some of these challenges and maybe help to alleviate some of the issues that we've been talking about so far.
Sure. Well, firstly, happy to work with everyone here on the panel. There's essentially 3 areas that we're focused on. Visualization of data, the cohorting or trending analysis of the data, and potentially the prediction of outcomes or the prediction of what that data means. Now that sounds very simple, but the platform that Professor Nenza described is key to all of this. In terms of visualization, simply being able to visualize the 50 petabytes of data in a very structured, better organized way can help with decision making, it can help with the trend analysis, and of course the prediction. So the first thing to do is to connect the data silos that we've talked about. The platform that we'll work on connects those data silos, whether it's the clinical pathology, the genomics, the imaging, or the EMR data. And there's a lot of data, as you described, each year, and that data is growing exponentially. But connecting those data silos, visualizing that information instantly removes perhaps some of the chaos that Professor Sala described. Very simply being able to organize the data in a much more straightforward way takes, of course, all of the preparation time away from those MDT meetings. We've heard in the last weeks and months how much physician time and caregiver time is taken simply to enter data, extract data. Now, I'm sure that that's something that all the physicians on this panel are very capable of doing, but it's not necessarily something that they went into medicine to do. So if we can support that aspect of caregiving through the use of software platforms and AI tools, then of course it relieves time to get back to actually focus on the decision making, the complex care, and actually working with patients on a daily basis. So it's really those elements that we're focused on. And there are plenty of sites already where we're doing this, visualizing the data in those different silos to help visualization. And the sort of, I guess, use cases and instances that this capability is helping with is, in fact, in some of the examples that you gave in your talk. Time to diagnosis, time to treatment. Very often it can be weeks between time to diagnosis and time to treatment. But simply by organizing the data in a structured way actually creates real-time access to that information. And of course, then comes the possibility to create those predictive tools. Seeing those data in an organized way, letting algorithms see those data, then creates the possibility of smart applications that can create alerts so that it's not all in the minds of physicians to have to remember to do the things that are important for patients, but rather they can be alerted to help and to drive that time to diagnosis and time to treatment. That's the second piece of it. So actually the journey I think that we're on is perhaps at an early stage, but we're getting there in terms of organizing the data of those crucial types and visualizing that to solve real problems, to move patients much more expeditiously through the care pathway.
Makes sense. Thanks, Ben. And Professor Nenza, you've been working quite closely with the Edison team. at Essen University and starting to collaborate on some of these new applications. Maybe you could talk a little bit about your experience and what you've been doing there to help to elaborate how some of these solutions would work in practice.
Yeah, yeah. This is exactly what I was referring to before. That if you want to do digital transformation, you need to start with building a platform. I think we all agree and all mentioned this. What we did last year with GE was exactly that, rolling out your digital health platform called Edison at our site, and we connected it to a number of systems, not just, of course, RIS-PACS, that's obvious, but also EMR, laboratory information system. We get genetics data in there, and even enterprise resource planning, and all that kind of data is flowing into the platform in real time. So whenever this data is generated, it is like immediately sent to the platform. So the platform is always up to date with the underlying systems. And then we deployed some applications that you had, like Patient Manager and Imaging Growth and so on. And then this year we also started to deploy AI applications, because in the end it doesn't matter if it's AI, it is visualization, cohorting, whatever it is, it's an app. And that's so cool. Once first you have to invest in the platform, and this is really hard work to get this running because of all these different systems, the silos. Of course, you can say, okay, I start with the most important one as a radiologist. Of course, I will want to have PACS and RIS, and then probably EMR, because there's a lot of data, and then you go step by step. But it's quite, to be honest, it's work, and you have to invest this work to get this platform out. But once you have it, it's so cool. You have a problem, and then you just have to look. If there's an app for it, just install it. Like with your iPhone, the App Store. I mean, it's not 2 minutes, but maybe 2 days or something. But honestly, 2 days for a new app. If you have it without a platform, it takes maybe 2 months, 2 years, forever. And also these platforms then enable new players to enter the market, because healthcare IT is a really complex business. And if you have a small startup or something and have a small application for a very dedicated problem, it could be too complex to get into the market because you have to invest too much. But once there's a platform with defined APIs and defined layer, and that gets all the complexity out of your way, you can say, hey, I'm the startup, I'm the small agile startup building a very specific application for some use cases, and get it into that app store of that platform, and then you have maybe a couple of hundred customers in the world because the platform is out there. And for you as a customer, you have a very specific problem, and then you can select from a huge amount of applications that you can install in a very short time frame. And I really like the analogy to what we all have in our pockets, our smartphones, an app store where for every solution virtually there's an app. And I think we are going to this in healthcare with these platforms.
Yeah. Thanks, Felix. That makes a ton of sense. And I think you touched on this very difficult issue of integration friction. Every time we bring in a new application, you have to go through an entire exercise, which is extremely difficult. But if we can find the way to bring the platform in, that just makes the whole process much, much more efficient. Avish, if I come back to you again, you've also been collaborating with GE Healthcare, particularly around the development of the OncoFlow solution, which is on the Edison platform. How do you think this longitudinal aggregation of data and development of a kind of a disease state and care pathway approach is really going to change things and make things more effective going forward about linking together different clinicians and players across the care pathway? If you could maybe talk about your experiences there.
Yes, of course. So this is the work that we started in Cambridge now, maybe 2-3 years ago. Definitely went through COVID, because I remember that period. And then hopefully starting very soon at Gemelli now. And I think this is what all of us wanted, right? It was our sort of dream, that we could first see all the data in one platform. Even that what Ben described and Felix, the visualization part is very important, because if you can picture now what happens in everyday clinical practice, is when the patient comes to be discussed in a tumor board meeting, or not tumor board, on another disease board, as it is, a radiologist will run around, review all the images, and maybe were read by a good colleague, and they're good enough to. Then they'll take all the other information and they'll try to make sense, and everybody presents. So it's completely, it's a good 6 hours a week for each radiologist to do that. And of course, it's fragmented. So by just aggregating and creating a visualization platform, I know we haven't got to the AI yet on that, it's completely a game changer. Because then when you go to that meeting, everything is there for everybody to see. You don't have to scroll the images again. The pathologist doesn't have to put that slide under the microscope and review it again. It's all there, the information. And then once it's all there, the team can make the decisions. Then, of course, what is best, and that's what we were working with, it's actually the integration step that Felix very, very nicely described. And that part is important because I think we're very much used to, if you review a cancer case, let's say ovarian cancer is something I do, because it's also tricky to review the treatment response. In your mind, you go, well, the patient they had chemotherapy, the CT, the second CT is come, and also all the other genomic information, the CA125, which is a tumor marker, and 70% they'll respond. Maybe not currently, because now you have several drugs. So doing that sort of size comparison, and it's probably not quite accurate, and certainly it's not personalized. That's for sure, or precise. And we see it now, and that's why you want to go beyond that size. You want to go, now you can see the phenotype, and now you can see the structure. Even we now go into the complex texture. Now we can, in a matter of seconds say, well, this tissue's got more fluid, it's complete necrosis, and really measure it. And put along the CA125, the tumor marker, and then build the bioflags. Those are very important. The patient's got a ctDNA level measured. During the treatment, the lesion's got more cystis, ctDNA is going down. Just disregard this being bigger. The CA125 is probably not going down immediately, but we know there is a lag. So all that information put together, it gives you the bioplag and say, look, this patient is responding. Do not remove her for the trial. She can carry on her trial. And doing this in a matter of seconds, in a way, it's going to completely revolutionize the way we deliver care. And while it's transferable, you build a system for a cancer. You probably, in that specific hospital, you have the cases, the expertise, and then that can be transferable to other similar diseases. And then, obviously, there's the work across the teams. So I think that's where we're headed. I think in my new hospital, I think we're going a bit beyond on the clinical trials because we are a site with 800 clinical trials, and we really want to also increase matching for clinical trials. It's very poor. We lose a lot of patients to a new drug. We cannot match them well. And I think that's terrible, actually, because it's an expensive drug out there that can do wonder for you, for the patient, and then we can't match it to the right patient because we follow the chaos pathway. So.
Okay. Well, that's great to hear. That's great to hear. And it clearly defines the potential for the future. If we can make these things happen, the clear case for improving patient experience and also improving clinical outcomes is extremely crystal clear there. So thank you for that. If I can come back to you, Alessandro, from your perspective, you've worked with different types of solutions. What kind of experience have you had of using AI within your institutions, and what kind of benefits have you seen throughout that time?
Yes, first of all, it was very important to start with the target to make AI familiar to our radiologists, because we have a community of 2,500 radiologists across 15 countries in 320 centers. So for this reason, we should break the barrier, the cultural barrier. Because as you presented in the introduction, we have to support the human intelligence. And we have to integrate the right solution for the right needs. And we have to say that in the market, if we have, for sure, by operational point of view, excellent solutions that the big OEMs are integrating their equipments. By clinical point of view, we don't have existing commercial solutions that really suit our needs. So the collaboration between our radiologists, our operation team, and the use of the data in the next few years will co-finalize, co-develop the existing solutions. Based on our experience, we have at the moment 10 different solutions that we implemented in 45 centers. We use independently big platforms where we have a multi-eye solution, so we work in partnership with single providers. We work, for example, in different fields, in neuroimaging for the early dementia staging. And in this regard, there are solutions that can measure in excellent way the brain volumes, so the hippocampus volumes. ICO brain dementia is a good solution in this regard. We work for screening in breast and in lung disease, and in this regard, there are for sure excellent solutions that in the pre-analysis support our radiologists. In the PET-CT examination, we integrated also some other solution that reduced the scan time and also gave us the possibility for the safety of the patient to decrease the administration of the FDG. And in this regard, I have to say that we are working with these partners in order to really create the right environment to don't correct the errors, but to use this tool to prepare or to accelerate our workload. We have to consider that we, as a radiologist, we are called to report every day more examination, because if the equipment and the workflow is more speed, we have to work in the same time reporting 30% of the examination. So the use of AI, I see in this regard that can allow us to make more examination in the same time, but to reduce also the risk of the errors. Because over the time, even if we have the best human intelligence that can be delivered every day, it's normal, it's physiological that after 20, 30 examinations, there can be some discrepancy in the evaluation. So the use of AI will not replace, as somebody said, but will support what is already the best in class, that is our professional skill.
Yeah, that makes sense. And as you say, it's really not about replacing the human intelligence, is it? It's about amplifying and maximizing the ability to use the human intelligence by taking away the more mundane activities that everybody has to go through. So we're coming towards the end of the session. Last couple of questions, maybe back to the two of you, please, if that's okay. First of all, Professor Nentzer, if you had one wish that you could ask for in terms of delivering the future of healthcare, what would that be?
Well, that would then be one wish for you, to you. As I talked about the Edison platform, and I think you did a lot of things right with that. And one thing I mentioned before was this, making it an open space for innovation, open data space, open API, open ecosystem, onboard others. So, and this needs open interfaces and standards that everyone uses so that we can exchange data. We call it semantic interoperability. And you did this very right with Edison, but you have a lot of other products, established products out there, like we're using centricity risk packs, and I know you have probably hundreds of established solutions in the hospital, and they are very valuable. So we don't want them to go away, and they won't go away because they are doing a great job. But they would do an even better job if they also had these open interfaces, if they would integrate into this system and could be part of this innovation process. So what my wish would be, give all these products that are already there, the interfaces, to connect to the platforms.
I completely agree, and I think, as Ben, you may attest to, this is something that we see as a fundamental enabler for the future. It needs to be open, needs to be able to be, interoperable, and that's one of the key factors. The older IB is more difficult to deal with, but as you say, it's really important to be able to upgrade this and to make sure that things are, able to be used in a number of different areas. So well noted. We'll put that on the wish list for the future. So Professor Sala, last question before we close the panel. What is your wish for developing the future of healthcare? If you could kind of wave the magic wand, what would you like to see more of going into the future?
Well, I would really see, before I retire, okay, so you've got 15 years, I would really want to see an integrated longitudinal care, and not aggregated, different, right? An integrated care, all longitudinal, delivered to the patient. That's all. I mean, obviously, you've got to do the AI. And also, can I add to his wish list?
Of course.
Okay, a layer up. That I want that interface, I would want that you, not only within the diagnostics, but you've got to extend it to therapy, i.e. a very obvious radiotherapy. So I know then you have to still be across vendors, across platforms. I don't know how you do it, but you've got to do it.
I think we just defined Ben's work plan for the next 10 years. So,
well, I like working with him, so that's good.
Excellent. Well, look, I'd like to close the panel there, but I really want to say thank you to all of you. Fantastic insights, and really, when we think about the future of healthcare, it's about all of the things that you spoke about. These are the hurdles, these are the issues we have to get through to be able to achieve that vision for what we think the future is going to look like. So if you can join me with a big round of applause for the panel here, and a big thank you for joining us. So look, as we close the session, I think we've clearly heard a very strong case for change here. Whether it's to be able to drive better patient experience, whether it's to drive better clinical outcomes, or to drive more efficient workflows, there's a clear need for us to make significant changes in healthcare and address some of those issues that we talked about at the beginning of the session. We're on the journey. I think you've heard from many of our collaborators here and other people that we're working with. We are here to be partners. We want to work with you as our customers and our partners to be able to find a way to solve these problems, to be able to find a way to develop the next generation of the technology, and most importantly, find the way to implement it in practice so that it actually is used by every single doctor, every single day, on every single patient. And for us, that is really what it's about, to be able to deliver the future of healthcare. So that's the end of the session today. I really want to thank you for joining, and I really appreciate the time that you spent to listen and to hear what we got to say here. I don't know if anyone was interested to see how the video ended. If you are, we're going to just run the video now so you can see how the second part of the chapter ended up. So if you could just run the video, and thank you very much for joining. Thank you.
I'm Lily, your technologist. Let me show you to your personal path.
Mom, where do I begin?
Step up to the scanner and relax your body. Remain still. And 3, 2, 1. Good. And lift your arm above your head. Remain still. And 3, 2, 1. Good.
How the mere thought of me was all it took for love to grow stronger than anything you'd ever known. The invisible things that consume us.
Can I help you?
Love. The fear you had dealing with this, and how different it is for me today.
You look great. All right, now you're just gonna lay down for me.
Facing the very same thing that took you from me. You told me once, we can look so deeply into ourselves that we miss what's most important.
So I'm afraid the MRI does show a suspicious lesion in the left breast. Based on appearances and outputs from the artificial intelligence application, probability of malignancy is high. That's the not so good news. The good news is that we caught it early, and when we look at global
I've been
data,
thinking about that lately.
we predict an excellent outcome for you.
But I see something now that was harder for you to see
Let's
back
talk
then.
about next steps.
Hope. Hope in the world that surrounds me in the people here to guide me through. You told me it was something I'd find when I needed it most. And I have.
Sophie, you've got a really good team here. As I told you before, I think things are looking really good.
Hi, Mom. How was the news?
What I hoped for.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Bye-bye.